Good morning, everyone. Last Thursday morning, Alan Scott, a 20-year-old veteran of the MTA, was brutally attacked while serving our city, slashed in the neck while performing a routine safety check in his conductor's cab. Luckily, a doctor was on board, just 2 cars back. He heard a man pleading for help, jumped into action, and literally saved his life. Over the weekend, a man was kicked onto the tracks at Penn Station. 3 people rushed to save him, pull him back into safety. That's the New York I know. When someone's in trouble, total strangers, they come to the rescue, no hesitation. That's the true heart of New York. And let me just be very, very clear. These brazen, heinous attacks on our subway system will not be tolerated. Over the last 6 days, I've held several meetings with top administration officials, City Hall, the mayor, and MTA leadership. I challenged everyone to find new ways to work together, to go after the repeat offenders that the mayor and I have talked consistently about, and I appreciate his effort on putting the spotlight on these individuals. We're focusing on repeat offenders, deterring crime, and protecting the people on our subways, our commuters, and also the unsung heroes of the MTA. This is something I've been laser focused on since taking office. Literally, the mayor was on the job 1 week, and the 2 of us were in the subways. Many, many other times we stood together trying to figure out different ways to make sure people feel safe on our subways and indeed are safe on our subways. But I'm not here today to talk to you about numbers and tell you stats and statistics about what's going up or what's going down. I'm here to take action because that's what the situation requires. Rattling off statistics, saying things are getting better, doesn't make you feel better. Especially when you've just heard about someone being slashed in the throat or thrown onto a subway tracks. There's a psychological impact. People worry they could be next. Anxiety takes hold. And riding the subway, which should just simply be part of your everyday life, is filled with stress and trepidation. And if you make a living as a transit worker, that is compounded exponentially, that level of stress. So I say this will not stand, not on my watch. So today, in the wake of these latest attacks, I'm unveiling a 5-point plan to rid our subways of people who commit crimes and to protect all New Yorkers, whether you're a commuter or a transit worker. Point 1, I'm redeploying nearly 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, and MTA National Guard to conduct bag checks in the city's busiest transit stations, which is why I want to introduce the leadership team that is helping us get to this point. Jano Lieber, you'll be hearing from him momentarily. You've heard him speak many times about the challenges we face on the subway, and he is so committed to making sure that our subways are safe, and I applaud his leadership. We also have Thomas Taffy, the Chief of Operations for MTA Police. The MTA Police are a critical part of this answer. But also, we have Major General Shields. This is my team, the Army National Guard, and Superintendent Stephen James of the New York State Police. All of them have come together to help us figure out the resources that we can bring to this situation. So we'll be having 750 members of the New York National Guard, as well as another 250 personnel from state and MTA Police. You'll start seeing them at the tables, making sure that weapons are not being brought in, working in concert with our New York State Police, as well as our NYPD. Because no one heading to their job or to visit family or to go to a doctor appointment should worry that the person sitting next to them possesses a deadly weapon. They shouldn't worry about whether someone's going to brandish a knife or gun. That's what we're going to do at these checkpoints. Number 2, I'm proposing that we amend New York State laws in this session, in a matter of weeks, to allow courts to ban anyone from riding the subway or taking a bus who's convicted of a violent crime against another passenger. Now, there's already a similar law in the books intended to protect personnel from the MTA. But that law has many loopholes that we've identified, and indeed, it's only been used 3 times since it was first enacted in 2020. We're going to get to the bottom of that, find out what's missing, what language is required. So basically, if you assault someone on the subways, you won't be on the subways. And a judge will now have the power to make sure that for at least 3 years, they'll have the ability to keep you off the subways. Now, this isn't some radical idea. Think about if you're convicted of a DWI. A judge determines that you're a danger. Guess what? You're not riding on our roads. You're not able to drive a vehicle. You lose your license. It's the same principle right here. And I expect the judges to use that discretion. Point 3, we're strengthening the cooperation between the police who patrol the subways and the district attorneys who prosecute the crimes. This is something that came up at our meetings. The district attorneys need to know the full body of evidence that's out there with respect to these recidivists and repeat offenders, something that the mayor and I understand. Enhanced coordination will be a hallmark of our effort to drive down gun crime. It has been. That coordination has helped us drive down gun crime. We spoke about that earlier this week up in Albany. Also helped us deal with car thefts, driving down those crimes as well. I believe it can work on the subways as well. A couple of components. Effective immediately, the MTA will work with the district attorneys and the NYPD to create a new early warning system for repeat offenders. We know who they are. They'll flag the criminal history at the time of arrest, so it can be fully considered when decisions regarding charging and bail are made. Second, we're establishing regular meetings between the police on the subways and the district attorneys. We'll hold them at the Crime Analysis Center right here in New York City. Again, bringing people together, sharing data, making sure there's accountability. And let me explain why that's significant. These meetings will give a regular forum for police and DAs to get the full picture of someone who's charged with a crime. Have the police had run-ins with them before? The police certainly know. Are they constantly causing trouble? Are they menacing to others? I want DAs to have all the background and information they need to make a strong case before a judge in court. This will make sure that the repeat offenders are dealt with accordingly. Again, I need the judges to uphold their end of the bargain. They're an important part of this. Last year, we gave judges more discretion. You all know the budget was 1 month late because I held it up to make sure I could get the discretion back to judges that they no longer would simply use the least restrictive means when considering bail. That is history. That is not the law. It has come to my attention that there are still some judges applying that standard. So, we're talking to the Office of Court Administration, enhancing education, saying, no, the law has since changed. It has gone into effect, and that would be having gone into effect since May of 2023. So I'm anticipating that we'll see a change in results when you look 1 year from now, but these new laws have only been in place less than a year. So I'm just saying to judges, use the tools that we've now given you to protect New Yorkers. Point 4 is about protecting our transit workers. If a camera had been positioned on Alton Scott's conductor cabin last Thursday, we probably would have already apprehended the person who slashed his neck. Or maybe they wouldn't have done it at all if they knew there were cameras watching their every move. Now, I've already pushed the MTA to speed up the installation of cameras in subway cars, and thank you for your commitment to do that. We've shaved off many, many months, and every month is going to make a difference. They'll all be completed by the end of this year, not the longer period that had been first talked about. And I think that's an essential deterrent. If someone who's going to do harm to someone else knows that is being recorded, that there's cameras watching them, they might just think twice about it. But also, if they go forth with committing a crime, we'll have the evidence to make sure they don't do it again. But also, there's a blind spot in the cabin. And that's why today I'm directing the MTA to install cameras in every single conductor cabin, as well as the platforms that face the cabins. Now, these transit workers, they have hard jobs, a lot of uncertainty, especially in light of the recent increases in crimes on the subways that they have seen. They keep our city running morning, noon, and night, and they deserve every level of protection to offer. The information gathered on the cameras will simply be used to aid in the prosecution of anyone who commits an offense. Point 5 is we're expanding the joint MTA and New York City run pilot program. It's called SCOUT. You may have heard of it. It stands for Subway Co-Response Outreach Teams. Now, these are led by mental health clinicians, but here's the difference between them and the SOS teams that I've talked about. These teams are also backed up by the police. They have police officers along for backup, and they only deal with individuals having the most severe mental health crises, those that our SOS mental health teams cannot safely approach without police support. These are literally the people who could pose danger to themselves or to others, and it is evident. So these teams will work to get them out of the subways. They already are there, get them services and support. And if something bad happens, they can use force if necessary to have them removed from the subway. In many cases, it means getting them into the psychiatric hospitals. You know I've had a lot of effort trying to open up more beds so they're available. And also, we have 2 of these teams in place right now. Today, I'm announcing an additional $20 million to have up to 10 more teams by the end of next year. Now, this is, again, in addition to our SOS teams, which have been doing tremendous work. I've met them many times. We've had them into our office. They've moved more than 350 struggling New Yorkers off the streets and into stable housing, the result that we were looking for, and it's getting better. People feel the difference. So, to recap our 5-point plan, bag checks will be conducted by over 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, National Guard. In addition to what the city is doing, we're coordinating with the City of New York, so people will see this. A bill to allow judges to ban people from using the subway, people who attack others and are convicted of a violent crime. Improve coordination between police and DAs to keep violent criminals off the subways. Cameras on and in the conductor cabins, and expanding our mental health outreach teams. Here's the message today. Anyone looking to do harm or spread fear on our subways, you will be caught. Plain and simple. There will be consequences. This has to end. New Yorkers deserve no less. And to those who are feeling anxious whenever they walk through those turnstiles, we will stop at nothing to keep you safe, you and your family members, and restore your peace of mind. Now, to further talk about and amplify these efforts, I'd like to introduce Jana Lieber, and again, thank him for so quickly responding and being there on the front lines to make sure that everyone who takes the New York City subways are safe. Jana?
Last year, in the face of huge challenges, Governor Hochul stepped up for subway riders. With her budget, she rescued the system economically, protecting us from cuts in service, layoffs, and even massive fare hikes that so many transit systems nationwide are facing, for example, in New Jersey. Together with Mayor Adams, she launched the Cops Cameras in Care initiative to improve safety within the subway system, surging officers underground, challenging us at the MTA to ramp up the installation of security cameras, and bringing in new resources to help those most vulnerable New Yorkers who are sheltering in the subway system. Again and again, our governor has shown her commitment to transit safety and to our riders. That work has had an impact. Yes, although we are focusing today on the perception of safety after Cops Cameras in Care, the surge in subway crime was beaten back last year, and last year we finished not only below 2022 in crime, but below pandemic levels. But today, in response to those high-profile crimes that the governor has talked about, she is taking additional and significant actions to address the fact that riders have been put on edge by some of this news. And I think these initiatives are going to make the system actually safer and feel safer. First, on the cameras, let me underscore again. Since last year, under Governor Hochul's leadership, we have increased to 15,000 the number of cameras in the system, and we're rapidly installing cameras on board all of the trains in the system. This has never been done before. For years, that was a hole in our visibility. Now, that is being turned around, and that's already proven to allow identification and apprehension of numerous offenders. Talk to Chief Kemper of the NYPD Transit Bureau about it, the impact of cameras on his work. And now we're doing what the governor talked about, cameras in conductor cabs, because we must first and foremost address the risk to our brave transit workers. No one should have to go through what Alton Scott went through last year. I also want to emphasize the historic actions that the governor has taken on mental health already. $1 billion initiative on mental health. No one's made a priority and a commitment of that level. The SOS program, which has already taken so many hundreds of homeless people out of the system, and not least the restoration of psychiatric beds, which became unavailable during COVID. We needed those beds back, and the governor pushed the hospitals to make them available. That's why we are able now to initiate this SCOUT program. We need, it's no secret that most of the folks who are suffering with severe mental illness in the system are not dangerous. But if you're on a train with someone who's having a psychotic episode and acting out in aggressive ways, you're not going to feel safe. You're not going to feel safe. We have to humanely address the needs of those folks. And the governor is now giving us the resources to do that at scale. In recent months, the MTA has been experimenting, as the governor described, with a program which sends out clinicians who are experts in identifying severe mental severe mental illness, and utilizing the provisions of the mental health law that allow for involuntary commitment, so-called 941 and 958 provisions of the state mental health law. Thus have resulted in 75 people being put indoors to get mental health treatment, people who are the most severe cases and who are, as the governor says, a danger to themselves, as well as very potentially dangerous to others and certainly discomforting to all of the riders. That has been a really successful initiative because we're pairing those clinicians with police officers. So what happens that's different? People spend the time, those clinicians are spending whatever time is necessary to make a connection to that person, to diagnose their condition, to evaluate whether involuntary commitment is required. And because they're spending the time, because they're backed up by cops and they themselves have a sense of safety, you know what? 3/4 of those cases that have been brought inside, 3/4 of those 75 people came voluntarily because the clinicians have the ability to spend the time and the safety. So this is an amazing model that we are excited to expand, because we all know that a very small number of those people who are struggling are having a disproportionate impact on the sense of safety in the system. And I just want to say that I am deeply moved by the opportunity it represents to address those folks who are struggling so badly, but also to make sure that our riders feel a much more safe and orderly environment. This is a huge issue. And the third element of the governor's initiative I want to emphasize is the coordination with the DAs. This is essential for transit worker safety. NYPD stats. Last year, there were 38 people arrested for subway crimes. For attacks on, there are 38 people arrested for attacks on MTA workers, for 43 separate attacks on MTA workers. And together they had over 600 prior arrests. 1% of subway arrestees, according to the NYPD, are responsible for well over 20% of the crime. We need to have a collaboration with the DAs so they have that full information about the history of these people, the impact that they have had. If they're career subway criminals, we got to make sure that everybody in the criminal justice pipeline, everyone in the chain of command, is fully aware of the consequences of just releasing this person, if that's going to happen, without discussion. And we really, really appreciate the leadership on creating a more coordinated discussion. It's essential for MTA worker safety. It's essential for MTA rider safety. And one other stat is, of those 38 arrests, there have only been 11 indictments. We have to have a dialogue about, when folks are arrested, are they actually is action being taken? And it's super important. So in closing, I just want to say, I believe that the actions the governor has announced today can have an impact not just on statistical safety, but on the perception and experience of our riders, which is essential to make New York, make New York the equity transit system that needs to be, that everybody who depends on the transit system can use it to get to jobs and education and opportunity and feel that they're in a safe environment. So thank you, Governor. We're ready to move forward on the implementation.
Who's the next speaker?
I get to introduce Tom Taffy, who is the Chief of Operations of the MTAPD and a great partner in everything that we do in MTA law enforcement.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Thomas Taffy, the Chief of Operations for the MTA Police Department. On behalf of Chief Mueller, the Chief of Police, and the men and women of the NYPD, of the MTA Police Department, I'd like to thank both the Governor and the Chairman for their support in our shared subway safety mission. A little bit about me, because I'm a lesser-known figure here. I was born and raised in the city, in the Bronx, and I have been one of those commuters my entire life in the subway station. I've worked in law enforcement for nearly 30 years now, 27 of them in the NYPD in the last 2 years, almost 2 years here in the MTA. So I've seen the highs and lows throughout these many generations, and I know that focus on reducing the fear of crime is as important as reducing crime itself. A focus on controlling disorder and, as was mentioned here, recidivism. Policing can be and is twofold. We can ensure that everyday rules are followed through the presence, verbal warnings, outreach, and summonsing. That's what we call the quantity. And also ensure that recidivists are identified and arrested and prosecuted. That's the quality. While our main mission in the MTA Police Department is to secure the commuter rails, since late 2019, the MTAPD has supported the NYPD in subway safety, and we've been working very closely with Chief Mike Kemper to help in that mission. And starting in late 2022, under the Governor's leadership, we have significantly increased that assistance. We now have officers in the subways in all 5 boroughs, including our hub stations in Grand Central, Penn Station, Jamaica, and Atlantic Terminal. We also have cops working with DOHMH clinicians in Manhattan, the scout teams that have been very successful, and we thank the Governor for increasing our opportunity to use those teams to help with persons in mental distress. We also work overnight in clearing the trains. We work with our homeless outreach partners in BRC and DHS, and we're in every corner in the city, even in Staten Island, on the railways. Our focus is to respond to issues that most affect the riders, the feeling of disorder, that fear of crime that I mentioned, fare evasion, persons acting violently in emotional distress. And we work closely with the conductors and other MTA employees, who we call the Platinum clients, since we work for the MTA ourselves, to identify the issues that concern their safety and allow them to do the jobs without fear of crime. And finally, we focus intensely on recidivism and advocate for crime victims by working closely with the DAs to build a solid case. And as you see here, it's basically every of those 5 points is something that we're being supported now by the Governor and the Chairman to do at a higher rate and more effective, especially with these scout teams. So once again, I'd like to close real quickly. Thank you, Governor and Chair, for this opportunity to let us help the NYPD and support the Subway Safety Initiative.